on Sunday night. Those are the headlines for this hour, and we start in Europe. And Denmark remains confident in European backing after the US threatened tariffs over Greenland. EU leaders, including Ursula von der Leyen, reaffirmed their commitment to Greenland's sovereignty and pledged unity. EU ambassadors held an emergency meeting, and President Antonio Costa announced a special summit in the coming days to discuss the issue. The Danish Foreign Minister Lars Rockmasson emphasised ongoing diplomatic efforts, including a new US-Denmark-Greenland agreement. The tariff threat, which has rattled global markets, was condemned by 8 European countries, warning it could harm transatlantic relations. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen declared that Europe will not be blackmailed. Of course, this comes as Donald Trump threatens tariffs on European partners over the Greenland issue. A 10% tariff for each of the 6 nations which deployed troops over the past few days for drills, which they also invited the United States to. The said tariffs will increase to 25% on June the 1st, as Donald Trump says. Joining us now to discuss this is Matthew Verdum. He is an American journalist and author. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Matthew, for joining us. Of course,
good to be here.
Great to have you. Donald Trump has threatened these tariffs on European partners, strong Western allies, members of NATO, set to come in on February the 1st. Of course, we haven't seen any budging in Donald Trump's stance towards this, and in fact, a doubling down. The United States, of course, already has a military base on Greenland, the Pitofnik space base. If the United States also already enjoys this strategic access, what exactly is a tariff achieving besides alienating these partners, longtime allies of the United States?
Well, under U.S. law, it's a legitimate use of a tariff to try to affect foreign policy, to get other countries to do what you want. That doesn't mean that all tariffs are good, or are justified, on a policy basis. I think that threatening other countries with tariffs, so early in the process, Donald Trump's escalation of his tactics with respect to Greenland are fairly new, and now he's already, demanding that other countries toe the line, or they're going to face, punitive tariffs based on not supporting the idea that the U.S. should be allowed to take over Greenland. I should add that, as you alluded to a moment ago, the United States already has military access to Greenland under a treaty that it signed with Denmark, the sovereign that rules, that technically rules Greenland, even though Greenland is an autonomous region within the Kingdom of Denmark. But Trump wants more access. I think there's only one major military base U.S. military base in Greenland, and he wants more. He wants to expand the U.S. military presence there, and right now Denmark is reluctant to allow him to do that, and so that's why Trump is meeting all this resistance from Denmark and from countries that are supporting Denmark in this international dispute.
And Matthew, of course, tariffs aren't a normal diplomatic tool between allies, let alone the United States and European allies and even NATO allies. If the US uses tariffs on Denmark on February the 1st, what stops the EU from retaliating and to drive these and will inevitably come with the outcome of driving these two long-time allies, NATO, of course, which has been in place since World War II, 75 years, apart further?
Well, there's absolutely nothing preventing Denmark or its allies who are united against the United States on this particular issue from levying their own tariffs against the United States. So, yeah, it could start a new trade war, and that's probably not good for the United States or for Denmark or any of its allies, or any U.S. allies to increase trade tensions over over Greenland. I think what Trump really wants here, he's been talking about a military takeover of Greenland, but I'm pretty sure he's bluffing. He is just trying to negotiate a better deal for the United States and to have greater access, greater military access than it currently has to Greenland. And he also wants to be able to, for U.S. Concerns, to be able to access the mineral wealth, particularly rare earth uh, minerals that exist in Greenland. So this is a power play on President Trump's part. He is trying to intimidate the other side into giving him what he wants. You know, if you were playing poker, you would say this was a bluff.
Matthew, now what we haven't talked about yet is the Supreme Court ruling, which is expected as early as tomorrow. The scheduled opinion days is for January the 20th, tomorrow. Of course, Donald Trump has been using the 1977 Emergency Powers Act to place these tariffs on countries, these broad sweeping tariffs. This is a law from 1977, which gives the president authority to act when a national emergency exists. Is this a national emergency?
In the way that courts would view these things, I suspect it is not. However, in U.S. law, when it comes to foreign relations, international relations, U.S. courts tend to grant substantial deference, lawyers call it, to the President of the United States. They don't like to get involved in in disputes. They think that the president should generally be have the final word when it comes to international disputes. Now, going against that, the lower courts have ruled against President Trump on the IEEPA, that's the acronym International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or whatever it stands for. And that is the case that the Supreme Court may decide as soon as, January 20th. No guarantee they're going to decide it. The Supreme Court doesn't, give you notice in advance of what decisions it's going to release. But a lot of people are hoping that the decision comes out Tuesday. So, lower courts have pretty uniformly ruled against President Trump on this issue, and Trump is hoping that the Supreme Court will save his tariffs. I covered the oral arguments. I'm a Supreme Court reporter. I covered the oral arguments in the tariffs case, and sometimes justices are playing devil's advocate and they ask questions just to provoke the other side, and it helps sharpen the arguments. It helps to clarify the issues. But I and many other reporters got the impression that the Supreme Court was quite hostile to the Trump administration's presentation at the Supreme Court, and they think that the Supreme Court is going to strike down the tariffs. It might not strike them down, 100%. It might develop some sort of a rule, and I can't predict what that's going to be, saying that he can do certain tariffs, some kinds of tariffs, but he can't do other kinds of tariffs. Area of international trade law is very complicated, and I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say what the Supreme Court is going to do. The feeling is, though, that they are going to strike down the tariffs, and if they do, then will that will restrain President Trump somewhat in his negotiations over Greenland. It's going to take away some of the power that he has to act.
It's interesting stuff. We eagerly await that decision coming within the